Sir, if you press that call button again, we'll be forced to report you to the captain. Flight attendant. Diana Roberts's tone was sharp, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. All eyes turned toward the man in seat 14C, sunglasses on hoodie pulled low and a calm expression that didn't match the brewing tension. To the crew, he looked like a difficult passenger. Entitled, suspicious, disruptive. But what they didn't know, what not a single person on Flight 2187 could have guessed, was that this problem passenger wasn't just another traveler. He was Marcus Washington, the CEO of Skyline Airlines. And this wasn't just another flight. This was an undercover investigation, a quiet mission to expose a pattern of discrimination Marcus had long suspected within his own airline. And within 5 minutes of landing, the truth would explode across social media, corporate headquarters, and the entire industry. Phones were already recording. Security was already alerted. But justice was just boarding. Before we dive into this story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the most powerful stories of truth, justice, and change. Marcus Washington stood quietly in the bustling terminal of Westlake International Airport, dressed down in faded jeans, a plain sweatshirt, and a cap pulled low. Gone was the custom-tailored suit. Gone was the polished leather briefcase, the security detail, the badge of command. Today, the CEO of Skyline Airlines was just another passenger, anonymous, ordinary, invisible. He'd chosen Flight 2187 for a reason. This particular route had received more than a dozen passenger complaints in the past 3 months, mostly from black travelers. Vague claims of non-compliance, disruption, and passenger re-education protocols peppered the internal reports. Most were dismissed by corporate communications as isolated misunderstandings. Marcus wasn't so sure. Approaching the gate, he pulled his rolling carry-on behind him, intentionally half an inch too large. It wasn't to cause trouble. It was a test. "Excuse me?" he said softly to the gate agent, Valerie Sanders, a woman in her 40s with efficient hands and a tired gaze. "Is there any chance of switching to a window seat?" She didn't look up. "Flight's full." "I see," he nodded. "Thank you anyway." Behind him, a white man in cargo pants and a hoodie made the same request. Valerie smiled. "I think I have something in row 12. Let me check for you." Marcus stepped aside, watching the interaction unfold. Same request. Different response. He boarded a few minutes later, presenting his ticket and carefully placing his carry-on in the overhead bin. "That bag looks too big," snapped flight attendant Heather Michaels, her tone clipped. "It fit on my last flight," Marcus replied. "Well, it won't on this one." "If it doesn't go in, it's going to baggage," she barked. Moments later, a white businessman approached with an even larger bag. Heather smiled and offered to help him stow it. Marcus tried not to react. Instead, he made his way to seat 14C Economy Plus. The seat was slightly more spacious than standard economy, but the scrutiny it drew made it feel smaller than coach. As he buckled in, another flight attendant approached. "Sir, are you in the right section?" asked Bradley Wilson, arms folded, eyes skeptical. "Yes," Marcus replied, offering his boarding pass. Bradley stared for a beat longer than necessary. Okay then." No apology, no smile, just suspicion. The plane filled. Marcus remained still, recording mental notes of every uneven smile, every selective courtesy. He watched Heather gently assist 2 elderly white women with their bags while curtly directing a young Latino mother to hurry up and clear the aisle. The humiliation wasn't loud or overt. It was the silence, the absence of welcome, the assumption of error. Halfway through the safety demonstration, Marcus noticed a pair of flight attendants, Heather and Bradley, whispering near the galley. "Got another one in 14C, Heather muttered. Bradley rolled his eyes. "Should have flagged him at the gate." They laughed quietly. Marcus feigned sleep, hiding his burning anger behind closed eyes. He felt like a stranger in a company he built from the ground up. He had turned Skyline from a fledgling regional carrier into a national player. But somewhere along the ascent, something had gone horribly wrong. At cruising altitude, service began. He waited patiently. Rows ahead of him received drinks and snacks. No one came to his row. He pressed the call button. Nothing. Pressed it again. Still nothing. He watched Heather deliver drinks across the aisle, skipping his row entirely. He cleared his throat. "Excuse me, may I have some water, please?" Heather looked down. "We'll get to you when we can." "No problem," he said quietly. But it was a problem. Not because he was thirsty. Because this was happening. In his airline. On his watch. The injustice simmered beneath his calm demeanor. Still, he documented everything on a discreet pen camera clipped to his shirt. Every interaction, every delay, every whisper. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. Finally, Jasmine Thomas approached. She was the only black flight attendant on the crew. Her posture was careful, her voice measured. "Would you like some water, sir?" she asked, her eyes kind but wary. "Yes, thank you," Marcus replied, noting her professionalism. She handed him a small cup and moved on, her presence a fragile counterbalance in a toxic environment. Then came the unexpected climax of the flight. Bradley returned this time with Diana Roberts, the senior flight attendant. She wore a tight smile. "Sir, we've received reports of a disruptive attitude in your section," Diana announced for all nearby passengers to hear. Marcus blinked. "Disruptive. You've pressed the call button repeatedly and spoken to our crew in a confrontational tone. If this continues, we may have to involve the captain." The cabin quieted. Phones tilted upward. Passengers leaned in. "I've only requested water," Marcus replied. "Your tone is causing discomfort," she said sternly. "Then I apologize if asking for water was mistaken for aggression," he replied, his voice low but steady. The elderly man beside him muttered, "This is ridiculous." Diana ignored him. "We'll be monitoring the rest of the flight. Please remain in your seat and limit interactions." As they walked away, Marcus's heart pounded not from fear, but from confirmation. This wasn't a test anymore. It was a reckoning. Marcus sat perfectly still in seat 14C, hands resting on his knees, the plastic water cup untouched on his tray. Around him, the cabin buzzed with quiet tension. Nearby passengers shot him glances, some sympathetic, others suspicious. Diana's warning had been loud enough to mark him as a problem without explanation, and that was the point. But what Diana Roberts and Bradley Wilson didn't know was that every second of this flight was being documented. Marcus's pen camera, custom-built by Skyline's internal security team, was capturing video, audio, and real-time metadata. He had insisted the technology be used for quality assurance, never imagining he'd one day use it to expose his own crew. He tapped his fitness band subtly. It was synced to the secure cloud server Thomas Jefferson had established just days ago. Every clip, every word, every microaggression was already being stored off the aircraft. He watched Heather pour a second glass of wine for a passenger 2 rows ahead and joke with a man in first class through the curtain. He saw Bradley help a white family adjust their seating so their toddler could look out the window. But no one returned to his row. No one asked if he needed anything else. And when turbulence began to shake the aircraft lightly, no one offered reassurance except Jasmine. She moved cautiously back toward his section with a fresh napkin. "Sir, please secure your belongings," she said quietly, kneeling beside him for a moment. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I saw what happened. I'm sorry." Marcus looked at her. "You don't need to apologize." "I do," she said, eyes scanning for Diana. "Because I've seen this before too many times. They talk differently when no one's watching." "You're watching," he said. She nodded and rose. "And I'm done staying silent." That moment, brief hushed, was more powerful than the turbulence. It was the first crack in the crew's coordinated facade. But the real storm was still ahead. 30 minutes later, Diana returned with Bradley trailing her like a shadow. They leaned in as if conducting a customer relations check, but their expressions told a different story. Sir Diana began. "This is your final warning. Any further confrontations or attempts to disrupt the crew will result in immediate reporting to the captain." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I haven't said a word since your last visit. Passive aggression counts." Bradley added, smirking. Several nearby passengers stirred uncomfortably. The elderly gentleman beside Marcus cleared his throat. "I've been sitting next to this man for 2 hours," he said. "He's not been disruptive. He hasn't even spoken since asking for water." Diana's lips thinned. "Sir, we appreciate your input, but this is a crew matter." "You mean a cover-up?" another voice said. A woman from across the aisle stood up, phone in hand. "I've been recording since the beginning. I saw how he was treated. You skipped his row during service. You accused him without cause." Diana's face darkened. "Ma'am, recording crew without consent is a violation of airline policy." "No," Marcus interjected calmly. "It's not." He reached up and clicked his pen once. A blue light glowed briefly. "This flight is being documented by me as part of an internal quality audit." Diana blinked. Bradley frowned. "What the hell are you talking about?" Marcus pulled back his sweatshirt slightly to reveal his company-issued security ID flipped backward, but clearly marked Skyline Airlines. Executive access. The cabin went silent. Gasps rippled through the rows like dominoes. "You're with Corporate Bradley?" asked voice cracking. "I'm more than that," Marcus said quietly. But he didn't elaborate. Not yet. Instead, he tapped his pen again. "Thomas, mark this timestamp," he said clearly for the recording. Diana took a step back. This isn't protocol. You should have identified yourself." "I did," Marcus replied. "When I boarded. You just didn't listen." Heather appeared, summoned by the tension. "What's going on?" Diana leaned toward her. "He's filming us. It's entrapment." The woman across the aisle raised her phone. "Then I guess we're all guilty because half this cabin has footage." "Did you call security on him?" another passenger asked. "Were you going to have him arrested for asking for water?" someone else added. The tide was turning. Jasmine stepped forward from the galley. "Captain's been informed of a disruptive passenger," she said. "But I didn't send it in." "Did either of you?" Diana said nothing. Bradley mumbled, "Just precaution." The elderly man stood up slowly. "This is bigger than a delay or a seating mix-up. You've humiliated someone who's clearly more than what you assumed." The curtain to the cockpit opened. The captain emerged, an older man with silver hair and a firm presence. "What's going on back here?" Marcus stood. "My name is Marcus Washington," he said, removing his cap. "I'm the CEO of Skyline Airlines." Stunned silence. The captain blinked. "Sir?" Marcus nodded. "You've been flying my aircraft for 7 years. But today, I came as a passenger." The crew froze. "I've witnessed enough to understand there's a problem, one I can't ignore any longer." The passengers around him began to applaud, soft at first, then louder. The pen camera blinked again. And for the crew of Flight 2187, the real audit had just begun. Diana's knees buckled slightly. The blood drained from her face as the truth settled in. The man she had belittled, dismissed, and threatened wasn't a disruptive passenger. He was the CEO of the entire airline. "Marcus Washington," she repeated faintly, as if saying the name might change the reality unfolding before her eyes. The captain, clearly unsettled, took a step closer. "Sir, if I may ask, is this official?" Marcus gave a firm nod and pulled a tablet from his carry-on. The device instantly connected to the in-flight satellite network. A few swipes later, the aircraft's internal crew system pinged new instructions delivered through a secure executive-only channel. Bradley leaned toward Diana. "What is this? What's happening?" Diana turned to Marcus, her voice a hollow whisper. "You can't suspend us mid-air. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Can't I? He turned the tablet toward the crew. The screen displayed a Skyline internal directive signed and sealed by the company's General Counsel and Board of Ethics. Temporary suspension and immediate grounding of crew flight 2187. Effective upon arrival. The flight attendants gasped. But we haven't landed yet, Bradley sputtered. Marcus looked around the cabin, addressing everyone with a clear, commanding tone. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption today. You deserve to know that Skyline Airlines takes the dignity of every passenger seriously. This flight and the conduct of its crew have revealed a pattern we can no longer ignore. Passengers looked at each other in disbelief. Some clapped. Others simply watched phones raised recording everything. This isn't just about me, Marcus continued. It's about a system that has gone unchecked for too long. A system where assumptions about race class and worthiness determine service. That ends today. Jasmine Thomas stood silently behind her colleagues, her face a mix of shock and vindication. As the only flight attendant of color, she had watched this unravel with conflicted emotions, but now she stepped forward. Sir Jasmine said quietly, I want to help. Marcus nodded. You already have. Diana turned sharply. You're siding with him. I'm siding with the truth, Jasmine replied. And I think you know you crossed a line. At that moment, the cockpit intercom buzzed. Captain to crew, we've been directed to reroute to Midway International. Security will meet the aircraft upon arrival. Please begin final cabin preparations. Midway wasn't their original destination. This was no ordinary landing. Bradley's voice turned frantic. This is crazy. You're ruining people's lives. You ruined your own, said the woman across the aisle, still recording. We all saw it. Diana looked around, searching for an ally, but found none. Even Heather, who had backed her earlier, avoided her eyes now. Then came the most unexpected moment of all. A child's voice, small but clear, spoke from 4 rows back. Mom, is that the man you told me about? The one from the video. Heads turned. A 10-year-old boy, seated beside a middle-aged woman, stood up holding a letter in his hand. Tamir Jones. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. The very child whose letter had launched this entire investigation here on this flight. I saved up for this trip, Tamir said aloud. And they treated me like I didn't belong. Like I was a problem. A ripple of silence swept through the cabin. My mom said maybe one day someone would do something about it. He turned to Marcus. I didn't know it would be you. Marcus stepped toward the boy, slowly kneeling to eye level. Your letter reminded me of who I work for, Tamir. Not shareholders, not executives, but passengers like you. The boy smiled faintly. Marcus stood and addressed the cabin once more. When we land, the crew will be escorted off, not to punish, but to investigate and correct. Because change only happens when someone stands up and says, enough. He turned to Jasmine. You'll oversee the deplaning. Security will meet us. Stay professional. Stay calm. Jasmine nodded. Diana's lip trembled. You can't do this. I've worked here for 20 years. My uncle's on the board. Marcus cut her off. Then he'll understand why accountability matters. As the aircraft began its descent, the passengers erupted into quiet applause. Not out of spectacle, but out of recognition. Something rare had just occurred. Real accountability. Real leadership. And as the wheels touched down, the moment crystallized. This wasn't just a reroute. It was a reckoning. The plane taxied to a quiet corner of Midway International Airport. There was no gate bridge, no terminal bustle. Just a row of unmarked black vehicles idling beside the tarmac and a small group of uniformed Skyline security staff standing at attention. The entire scene radiated quiet authority. Inside the aircraft, passengers were hushed. Some whispered updates to phones still recording. Others simply watched the aisle waiting for what they knew was coming. Cabin crew disarmed doors for arrival and cross-check. The captain's voice echoed through the speakers. Diana didn't move. Diana, Jasmine prompted gently. Standard protocol. Diana's jaw tightened as she complied. Marcus stood in the aisle. He wore no official badge, no executive name tag, just the calm command of someone who had nothing left to prove. The aircraft door opened with a hydraulic sigh. Thomas Jefferson Skyline's head of airport security and Marcus's longtime friend stepped on board, flanked by 2 agents. He gave a quiet nod to Marcus, then addressed the crew. By order of executive command, all flight attendants and cockpit crew of Flight 2187 are hereby suspended pending investigation. Heather gasped. Bradley swore under his breath. You have 3 minutes to gather your personal belongings. Leave any company devices. Diana finally found her voice. You can't just... I can, Thomas said flatly. And I have. Let's not do this the hard way. As the crew hesitated, Jasmine moved past them and addressed the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We'll begin deplaning shortly. Please remain seated until further notice. Passengers complied. Many nodded respectfully toward her. The quiet tension, instead of chaotic, had become solemn, like witnessing history unfold. The flight crew slowly complied. One by one, they walked the aisle heads lowered, passing the very passengers they'd served with bias hours earlier. Marcus remained still, watching not with malice, but with purpose. The elderly man from earlier stood. Son, he called softly to Marcus. You're doing the right thing. I hope so, Marcus replied. We're not just correcting a flight. We're correcting a culture. Once the crew had been escorted off, the passengers began to deplane. Then came the unexpected. As Marcus stepped toward the exit, a passenger, a young woman in her 20s with a sleek bag and sharp eyes, gently grabbed his sleeve. Mr. Washington. They're already spinning this. Look. She handed him her phone. On screen, a headline flashed across a live news app. Skyline CEO stages undercover sting. Crew alleges entrapment. Beneath it, a video clip, a heavily edited version of the cabin incident complete with misleading subtitles and carefully cropped shots. The narrative had been flipped. The CEO wasn't exposing bias, he was orchestrating chaos. Marcus stared at the screen. Already, the woman nodded. I work in media strategy. That edit. It's strategic, deliberate. Someone prepared it in advance. Jasmine stepped beside him. Richard. It had to be. Richard Whitmore, board member, aviation kingmaker, and Diana's uncle, had moved faster than they expected. Marcus turned to Thomas. Get the passengers who witnessed the incident. Anyone willing to speak on record. We need their statements, their footage. I'll start now, and get legal on standby. If Richard's behind this, it won't stop with PR. He'll go for my credibility, the board, the stock. Then we beat him with truth, Jasmine said. But truth, Marcus knew too well, didn't always win in the short term. As they exited the aircraft, news vans had already begun pulling into the private gate lane. Reporters leaned from open doors. Microphones pointed. The questions began firing. Mr. Washington, was this a personal vendetta? Did you entrap your own staff? Are you abusing executive power for a publicity stunt? He raised a hand, steady and firm. I will release a full statement once we've completed our internal review. What happened today wasn't about me. It was about justice. And that doesn't come with camera angles. Inside the secure terminal room, Marcus, Jasmine, and Thomas regrouped. I need to brief the board, Marcus said. Before Richard does. Too late, Thomas said grimly. He's already called an emergency session. He's framing this as a rogue act, violating operational standards. Marcus blinked. So this is it, he said quietly. The counterstrike. Thomas placed a folder on the table. Then we hit back. Inside were printed transcripts of discriminatory complaints reclassified and buried, service records showing repeated patterns, and most damning of all, security reports that had been tampered with, logged under Whitmore's direct oversight. "We go public," Jasmine said. Marcus exhaled. "Not yet." "Why not?" Thomas asked. "They're burning you alive in the media already." "Because when we go public, it has to be nuclear." He looked out the window as Flight 2187 sat motionless on the tarmac, a grounded monument to what was and what needed to change. "Next part," Marcus said, turning back to them. "We don't just respond. We reveal everything." Marcus entered Skyline Airlines' downtown headquarters through the underground entrance, not to avoid the press, but to avoid the ambush. He already knew the building's lobby had become a battleground of PR agents and planted protesters holding up pre-printed signs reading "CEO overreach" and "Flight crews deserve respect." The message was clear. Richard Whitmore had mobilized his counterattack fast and ruthless. Upstairs, Alicia greeted him with wide eyes. "They've moved the meeting to the executive conference room. Richard's chairing it." Marcus gave a tight nod. "Call Jasmine. I need her here. And Thomas." Now, when he stepped into the boardroom, the air was electric, a mix of artificial calm and buried panic. 14 members sat around the long mahogany table. Most avoided eye contact. Richard, already seated at the head, gave a thin, regal smile. "Marcus, glad you could join us. We were just about to begin." "Of course you were," Marcus replied evenly. "Since you seem eager, go ahead." Richard clasped his hands as though hosting a family dinner. This emergency session was called to address concerns regarding the events on Flight 2187. Specifically, the CEO's use of deceptive tactics, his public ambush of staff, and the resulting damage to our brand and stock. He paused, letting silence act as emphasis. "To be clear, no one here denies the importance of equality. But our concern lies in the methodology." Marcus remained still, watching Richard play the room like a conductor. Board member Fernando Vasquez spoke up. "I've reviewed the footage and edits released online. It paints a concerning picture, Marcus. Those edits are strategic propaganda," Marcus said calmly. "And I'll be releasing the full footage unedited today, along with statistics showing systemic mistreatment across multiple routes." Richard chuckled lightly. "You mean the documents you circulated this morning? Anonymous testimonies, selective reports, unverified data." "I have verification," Marcus said. "And witnesses." Right on cue, the conference room doors opened. Jasmine Thomas stepped in, followed by Thomas Jefferson and 3 Skyline employees, 2 flight attendants, 1 gate agent, all of whom had experienced or witnessed bias. "This isn't a presentation," Marcus said. "It's testimony." One of the flight attendants' tears in her eyes told the board about a decade of seeing black and brown passengers questioned over their seating or treated coldly while white passengers received champagne. The gate agent described subtle nudges to enforce stricter policies on passengers who looked like they might cause problems. "This is what I've seen on my own aircraft," Marcus added. "Not once. Routinely." Patricia Reynolds, the board chairwoman, leaned forward. "Marcus, the question isn't whether discrimination exists. It's whether your unilateral actions expose the company to legal and operational risk." "They did," Richard cut in. "And I propose a vote to suspend Marcus Washington as CEO pending investigation." The room fell to a hush. "I second," came the voice of board member Linda Chang, though reluctantly. Marcus stood. "Before we vote, allow me to present one final piece of evidence." He opened a folder and passed copies to each board member. It was a report compiled by Zoe Chen and Thomas Jefferson, cross-referencing employee complaint reclassifications with IP addresses and login credentials. The data revealed deliberate manipulation of discrimination reports reclassified as general service complaints by logins tied directly to Richard Whitmore's assistant. "These are your fingerprints, Richard." Richard's calm fractured his jaw, tensing. "That's preposterous." I also have footage retrieved from personal backups showing your niece instructing staff to handle problem passengers without paper trails. I'll be releasing that too." Patricia turned to Richard. "Is this true?" Richard stood, voice rising. "This is a witch hunt. You're allowing this man to dismantle the company because of isolated complaints." "No," Marcus said, eyes locked on him. "I'm dismantling your shadow network, your system of silence." Then came the twist no one expected. The doors opened again. Tamir Jones walked in, the 10-year-old boy whose letter had started it all, holding his mother's hand. Behind them was a civil rights attorney and several reporters. "We were invited," Tamir's mother said, holding up a media badge. "He said the board should meet the people this affects most." Tamir approached the table. His voice was soft, but it cut like a blade. "I saved for 6 months to fly on your airline. I thought it would be fun. Instead, they made me feel like I did something wrong just for being me." Even Richard couldn't look him in the eyes. "I want to be a pilot one day," Tamir finished. "But only if people like me are welcome on planes." The room went silent. "I move we vote," Patricia said. One by one, board members raised hands. Richard's motion failed. Marcus would remain CEO. But the bigger twist, Patricia moved another vote, one to remove Richard from the board entirely. This time it passed 11-3. As Richard stood, his face ashen, he pointed a trembling finger at Marcus. "You've made powerful enemies. Don't forget that." Marcus didn't flinch. "You just made allies." Within hours of the boardroom vote that removed Richard Whitmore and upheld Marcus Washington's leadership, the war moved from conference tables to television screens. News outlets that had ignored the Skyline Airlines scandal now blared headlines like wildfire. "CEO ambushes flight crew." Is this the end of airline leadership as we know it? Union outrage as CEO secretly records employees. Marcus stood in his office overlooking the skyline, watching the headlines scroll across 3 news channels at once. His assistant Alicia muted the monitors. "They've activated the full machine," she said, setting a tablet on his desk. "You should see this." It was a video posted by a new account named Skyline Insider, already with hundreds of thousands of views. The footage showed Marcus pressing the call button, repeatedly cut with dramatic zooms and slowed frames, making him appear aggressive, entitled confrontational. But the damning part came next. A former Skyline employee, now conveniently an anonymous industry veteran, speaking with a disguised voice. He was always intense. You could tell he thought he was better than the rest of us. When he didn't get his way, he lashed out. "Complete fabrication," Marcus muttered. Alicia nodded grimly. "We traced the account. It's managed through a shell company connected to Whitmore's old PR firm. They're launching a character assassination campaign." "They're not just trying to take me down," Marcus said. "They're rewriting the entire narrative." The union jumped in the next day. Diana Roberts and Bradley Wilson appeared together in a staged interview with one of the airline industry's top media platforms. Diana's voice quivered. "I've dedicated 20 years of my life to this airline. What happened on that flight? It was entrapment. He targeted me because of my last name." Bradley chimed in, adding, "We were following procedures. He was looking for trouble the moment he boarded. I didn't even know who he was until security showed up." The interviewer leaned in. "Did he ever raise his voice?" "Make threats. Not directly," Diana said. "But it's the implied pressure. The kind that makes you feel unsafe even when he smiles." It was a masterclass in gaslighting. By noon, a new lawsuit was filed. Diana Roberts, Bradley Wilson, and the union jointly sued Marcus Washington and Skyline Airlines for $30 million, citing emotional trauma defamation and hostile work conditions. Marcus's wife Illa, a seasoned civil rights attorney, reviewed the suit with arms crossed. "This isn't about winning in court," she said. "It's about bleeding you in public. They're weaponizing perception." That night, Marcus's 16-year-old son was followed home by a black SUV. Security footage caught the vehicle idling near their residence for nearly 20 minutes. The family car was keyed again, this time with the word liar etched into the paint. Marcus brought in Thomas Jefferson, double the security detail. Ela and Jordan aren't to leave the house without escorts. Thomas nodded. Also, we found 2 listening devices in your office. High-level stuff. Whitmore Marcus said under his breath. The next blow came less than 48 hours later. 2 passengers from Flight 2187, who had initially defended Marcus publicly, suddenly recanted their statements. One claimed he had been caught up in emotion and misinterpreted the interaction. The other said her video was selectively edited and no longer supported the discrimination claims. Marcus stared at the news alerts in disbelief. They've been bought, he said. Or threatened. Alicia confirmed his suspicion. The first witness was a marketing executive whose firm had just won a multi-million-dollar ad contract from Vista Airlines. But the climax hit harder than anyone expected. The Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, issued a public notice Skyline Airlines was under investigation for executive interference in standard flight procedures and potential violations of safety protocols. It was clear Whitmore had triggered a full-blown regulatory strike. "They're using the FAA to bury you," Jasmine Thomas said, pacing his office. "They want to scare every other CEO from trying what you just did." Marcus didn't reply immediately. He walked to the window, looking out at the city, his reflection barely visible in the glass. "I didn't think they'd come after Tamir." "What?" Jasmine blinked. He turned the screen toward her. A whisper campaign had begun online. Anonymous commenters were implying the boy's story was scripted. His family paid actors, his letter a PR stunt. One post included a blurred image of Tamir's school, circled in red. Jasmine's face turned pale. That's evil." "Yes," Marcus said. "It is." And then, as if orchestrated by fate itself, Alicia burst in. "Sir, you need to see this." She handed him a small package that had been delivered no return address. Inside was a photograph of Marcus's family at their dinner table, taken through their kitchen window. A single line was scrawled on the back in red marker. "Stay in your lane." Marcus stared at it. The air in the room grew heavy. "No more press releases. No more soft statements," he said. "What are you going to do?" Jasmine asked. He looked at her with fire in his eyes. "I'm going to bring in someone who doesn't play by corporate rules. If they want war." He picked up the phone. "I'm calling Zoe Chen." Zoe Chen didn't knock. She appeared in Marcus Washington's office like a phantom summoned by necessity. Petite, composed, and piercingly direct. Her presence shifted the atmosphere instantly. No handshake, no greeting. Just the quiet thud of a leather satchel landing on Marcus's desk. "I've already been watching them," she said flatly. Marcus blinked. "How long?" "Since the Diana Roberts video. Your enemies broadcasted their strategy the moment they edited you into a caricature. Classic narrative manipulation. They wanted to turn you into the angry black man trope. They failed, but barely." Jasmine Thomas stood by the door, arms folded, watching Zoe with equal parts suspicion and admiration. "And your ex-FBI?" Jasmine asked. 10 years in behavioral threat assessment. Now I fix what the Bureau can't touch, especially when the system itself is part of the problem." Zoe laid out a series of high-resolution satellite photos, server access logs, and private correspondence between Vista Airlines executives. "Whitmore has at least 3 private intelligence firms feeding him intel. They've been inside your HQ systems for weeks. Audio, video, even your family's devices have been cloned remotely. Whoever's bankrolling this isn't just protecting Richard, it's positioning Vista Airlines for a hostile acquisition." Marcus exhaled slowly. "So it's not just personal, it's strategic," Zoe confirmed. "They want Skyline's roots assets and, most of all, your silence. If you step down now, Whitmore wins. And if he wins, every airline CEO considering reform will back off. But how do we fight back without becoming them? Jasmine asked. We can't stoop to surveillance and smear campaigns. Zoe met her eyes. We don't fight dirty. We fight smarter. She opened a laptop and played a snippet of a leaked internal memo from Vista Airlines. The voice was unmistakably Charles Whitmore Richards' son. Delay their maintenance slots. Shift their gate assignments. Anything that adds operational friction. They're not competitors. They're a threat to industry order. Jasmine gasped. That's illegal. And traceable, Zoe said with a tight smile. If we capture the right chain of command. Marcus nodded, absorbing every detail. What's the plan? Zoe tapped the satchel. Coordinated escalation. 3 fronts. She counted off with sharp fingers. 1, I'm deploying ghost accounts across aviation forums to bait Whitmore's defenders into overreaching. We'll draw out what they're really willing to say when they think they're anonymous. 2, we'll leak selective counter footage from Flight 2187. Not the whole thing, just clips where crew behavior is undeniably biased. The goal isn't to prove your case in one go. It's to seed doubt in theirs. 3, I'll begin forensic tracking of Vista's stock trades and FAA communications. If we find evidence of collusion, especially between Richard and regulators, we'll have grounds for legal and congressional action. Alicia walked in with coffee, but paused at the word congressional. You think this goes that deep? She asked. Zoe raised an eyebrow. I know it does. Racism isn't just personal, it's infrastructural. Whitmore's clan built their empire inside those walls. I'm here to tear some of them down. That night, Marcus held a private Zoom meeting with a select group of industry leaders, those who had quietly reached out since the summit. Among them, the CFO of Northern Wings, the COO of JetSpan, and 2 mid-level officials from the Department of Transportation. All had seen the skyline affect the public's appetite for fairness. All feared Whitmore's influence, and all were terrified to act. I can't take him head-on, the CFO confessed. Richard's family helped my father into this business. I understand, Marcus said. But he's not just coming for me. He's coming for the idea that airlines should treat passengers equally. If we let this campaign succeed, we're endorsing regression as policy. Then the call was interrupted. A new participant joined. User Skyline Shadow. Zoe, monitoring the feed from a secondary line, froze. That's not one of mine. The screen flickered, then displayed a single image. A top-secret FAA report marked confidential and a caption. I have evidence of direct coordination between FAA staff and Vista Airlines. Do not trust your regulators. Before anyone could respond, the user disconnected. The screen went dark. Who was that? Marcus asked. Zoe stood grabbing her satchel. Either a whistleblower or bait. Either way, we need to move. Now. But the climax came the next morning. Marcus walked into Skyline HQ to find every printer in the building had spat out a single-page flyer. It was a grainy black-and-white photo of Marcus at a protest from 15 years ago, megaphone in hand, fist raised, surrounded by signs reading, End Corporate Racism. At the bottom, bold red letters screamed, This is your CEO. Security scrambled to remove the papers. Staff whispered. Executives avoided eye contact. The board called an emergency PR meeting. It's a hit job, Marcus told them. Straight from Whitmore's playbook. But the board was shaky. We can't afford more instability, one member warned. Marcus turned to Zoe, who stood in the back of the room. We need to go public, he said. All the way. Full data dump. Internal recordings. Everything. Zoe hesitated. Once you cross that line, there's no walking it back. I'm not trying to walk back, Marcus said, jaw set. I'm trying to walk forward. And bring the whole damn industry with me. The Skyline media room hadn't been used for years. Dust clung to the corners, the podium lights flickered when powered on, and the teleprompter cables had to be replaced that morning. But by noon, the space buzzed with urgency. Marcus Washington stood center stage, flanked by Jasmine Thomas and Zoe Chen, facing a battery of cameras representing every major news outlet in the country and several international ones. Zoe tapped her watch. "Broadcast begins in 60 seconds. Marcus nodded. Alicia gave him a thumbs up from the tech booth. The lights dimmed, cameras adjusted focus, and the official Skyline Airlines backdrop sharpened behind him. For a moment, it was utterly silent. Then the red light on the center camera lit up. "You're live," Zoe said in his earpiece. Marcus stepped forward. "My name is Marcus Washington. I'm the CEO of Skyline Airlines. For the past several weeks, my company has been at the center of a national debate, not just about customer service, but about something far more foundational: equality, dignity, and the responsibility corporations hold when they operate in public space." The room remained dead quiet, except for the steady hum of camera equipment. "Today, I am releasing the full, unedited footage of my undercover experience as a passenger aboard Flight 2187. No cuts, no commentary, no context beyond what viewers themselves will witness." Screens around him lit up with thumbnails of the video already going live across platforms: YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, even TikTok. Each video bore the same bold title: Flight 2187. The truth. Jasmine stepped forward. "You'll see what I've seen on dozens of flights. Patterns. Not isolated moments. Not anomalies. But behavior driven by unspoken rules and reinforced by silence." Marcus continued. "You'll also see how that silence ends. Today, we're not just releasing this footage. We're publishing a 120-page report, complete with data, statistical analysis, and sworn statements from more than 60 employees across departments." Alicia triggered the download link on screen. Moments later, news stations confirmed the drop Skyline Airlines whistleblower report, "Live Now." And for anyone questioning the authenticity of our evidence, Marcus added, "We've made everything available for forensic verification by independent analysts." But the climax came not from Marcus's speech, it came from who showed up. 20 minutes into the broadcast, while Marcus answered questions from reporters, the doors at the back of the room burst open. Everyone turned. A man strode forward in a tailored navy suit, flanked by 3 men in matching blazers, bearing the logo of the Department of Justice. Gasps rippled across the room. Phones rose into the air. "Mr. Washington," the lead agent said, with a firm voice. "I'm Special Investigator Darnell Carter. As of this morning, the Department of Justice has opened a formal inquiry into allegations of systemic racial discrimination and corporate sabotage across multiple carriers, including Vista Airlines." Murmurs erupted. Cameras swiveled violently. Zoe stood still, her jaw clenched. "We've reviewed the evidence provided by Skyline," Carter continued. "And we've also received an anonymous tip containing damning footage from inside Vista's boardroom. That footage is already being examined by federal prosecutors." Jasmine blinked. "Wait, someone inside?" Vista flipped. Carter didn't answer. Instead, he handed Marcus a sealed envelope. "This is a subpoena authorizing the seizure of specific communication records from board members affiliated with the Whitmore family." "Are you saying Richard Whitmore is under investigation?" a reporter shouted. "I'm saying," Carter replied carefully, "that no one is above the law." Marcus felt a strange pressure rise in his chest, some combination of vindication and disbelief. The weight of what had begun weeks ago was now shifting into motion, rolling beyond his grasp. But the moment wasn't done. Just as Carter finished, a breaking news alert flashed across every screen in the room. Vista Airlines stock plummets 22%. After DOJ announces criminal inquiry. And beneath it, a subhead. Anonymous leaker releases secret audio. "We'll bury him before he buries us." Voice. allegedly belongs to Charles Whitmore. Gasps turned into a frenzy. Reporters spoke over each other. Microphones were shoved closer. Marcus stepped back from the podium. He had said what needed to be said. Zoe leaned toward him. That audio didn't come from my team. Then who? Alicia looked up from her phone and mouthed skyline shadow. Jasmine turned to Marcus. This is getting biblical. He nodded. Let it. Backstage. As Marcus removed his microphone, his phone buzzed again. A text from a blocked number. The storm you started has many captains. Keep sailing. He stared at the message for a long moment before handing the phone to Zoe. Track it. I'll try, she replied. But I think we've just entered the next phase. That evening, the footage from Flight 2187 hit 30 million views. Protesters began gathering outside Vista Airlines headquarters in 4 cities. Senator Maria Aguilar announced she would introduce a bill to federally regulate airline discrimination protocols. Skyline's website temporarily crashed from traffic. Public sentiment shifted. And for the first time since the scandal began, Skyline's stock ticked upward. Marcus watched it all from his office window. They're going to come back at us hard, Jasmine warned. I know, Marcus said, voice steady. But now the whole world is watching. The conference room at Skyline headquarters had been silent for 12 minutes. Not the silence of peace, but of calculation friction and bracing for impact. Marcus Washington stood at the far end of the long glass table, arms folded, while the board of directors reviewed the most volatile 24 hours in the company's history. The DOJ inquiry had gone public. The leaked audio, Charles Whitmore's voice practically admitting conspiracy, was now viral. Skyline's whistleblower report had reached over 50 million viewers. Every airline analyst in the country was watching. And yet, the question gripping the board wasn't about justice or truth. It was about survival. Let's be clear, began Patricia Reynolds, the board chairwoman, voice cool and deliberate. Skyline's brand is no longer in crisis. It's in freefall. We need a strategy, not tomorrow. Now. Linda Chang adjusted her glasses. We've weathered storms before. What we're seeing now is different. It's not just PR fallout, it's the collapse of institutional trust. Marcus remained silent, letting them circle each other. Fernando Vasquez tapped the dossier in front of him. And we're still sitting on unreleased documentation about other departments. If we don't act with transparency, someone else will act for us. What are you suggesting? Richard Blake, one of the oldest board members, asked stiffly. Full disclosure, Fernando said. Complete overhaul. And perhaps new leadership across multiple executive branches, not just flight operations. Everyone turned subtly toward Marcus. He didn't flinch. The entire industry is watching us, Patricia said. How we respond could redefine corporate responsibility in aviation or destroy us. Marcus finally spoke. Then it's time we stop pretending this is only about Skyline. His voice didn't rise, but it cut through the tension like a blade. This is about power, about who's allowed to hold it, and who's punished for simply challenging it. The room stilled. Before this, we had a chance to clean house quietly. But now we must decide whether we rebuild in public or burn in private. Fernando leaned forward. You're still under legal fire, Marcus. Vista is arming its legal team, and the FAA review hasn't cleared you yet. True, Marcus replied. But look around. Do you think the public will tolerate any attempt to scapegoat this? Alicia, seated at the end of the table, passed a fresh report across the table. New poll from Morning Track, she announced. 72% of Americans support Marcus Washington staying on as CEO. 84% of Black respondents say Skyline's response is the first time they've seen a corporation truly acknowledge their experience. And Vista, Patricia asked. Alicia smiled faintly. Their support dropped by 19 points in 12 hours. And they just canceled a press briefing. The board murmured. Marcus opened the folder in front of him. I'd like to present what I'm calling the Equity Continuum Skyline's proposed future model. It includes sector-specific reforms, third-party auditing rotating equity boards, and a cross-carrier alliance to develop industry-wide accountability standards. Blake scoffed. That sounds like a pipe dream. Maybe Marcus said. Or maybe it's a blueprint. The discussion stretched into another hour debates over scope-cost legal implications. But Marcus stayed grounded, calm, certain. Every word he spoke, he backed with evidence and vision. Every objection he countered with facts. But the climax came not in that boardroom, but on a split screen. Zoe Chen burst into the room unannounced. Turn on Newsnet. Now. Patricia grabbed the remote. The screen flickered and then locked onto a live feed. Charles Whitmore, Vista Airlines CEO, standing in front of the U.S. Senate Subcommittee on Aviation Regulation. The footage you've seen, he was saying, is taken wildly out of context. The real issue here is a rogue CEO conducting personal crusades from within a public corporation, costing the industry billions in stability. A senator cut in. Mr. Whitmore, did you or did you not say, and I quote, "We'll bury him before he buries us." Charles shifted uncomfortably. That comment, if authentic, was never intended as a threat. It was frustration. Hyperbole. The room at Skyline was frozen. Then the senator leaned forward. "We just received an email from your own Director of Ethics and Compliance, including transcripts, financial records, and an affidavit." A beat of silence. Mr. Whitmore, the senator, continued. "It appears your entire board was briefed on efforts to strategically discredit Marcus Washington and suppress discrimination complaints." Zoe looked at Marcus. They just flipped. Alicia covered her mouth. Someone inside Vista turned. As Whitmore stammered through denials, the screen shifted to breaking news. Vista Airlines facing federal subpoena over civil rights violations and coordinated disinformation campaign. The room at Skyline erupted not in cheers, but in stunned stillness. This wasn't just vindication. It was a tectonic shift. Marcus turned toward the window. Outside, a crowd had gathered. Protesters, reporters, supporters. For the first time, he noticed something else. Passengers, hundreds of them, lining up at the Skyline check-in kiosks. Not boycotting. Boarding. "Looks like people still believe in us," Jasmine whispered behind him. No, Marcus replied. "They believe in what we just proved is possible." By the time Marcus returned to his office, Skyline's headquarters was a hive of activity. Legal teams huddled over conference tables. Media strategists fielded non-stop calls. Analysts updated real-time dashboards showing stock volatility approval ratings and public sentiment graphs that looked more like seismograph spikes than business trends. Yet Marcus felt calm. He had just watched Charles Whitmore, the untouchable titan of aviation, falter under the weight of leaked evidence and a rising tide of accountability. For the first time, Marcus sensed that the invisible fortress protecting the old guard was cracking. Still, he knew what was coming next. Alicia met him at the door. Zoe's downstairs. And Jasmine just sent a warning. What kind of warning? She overheard a phone call. Charles is retaliating. He's going after our suppliers. Marcus exhaled. He's trying to choke us through the back end. He made his way to the underground operations war room, a makeshift command center Zoe Chen had set up beneath the main tower. Computer monitors lined the walls, pulsing with network maps. Email intercepts, encrypted communications, and supplier contracts. Zoe looked up from her screen. It's already started. 2 fuel vendors have pulled out citing contractual misalignment. And a catering partner just lost our order for the next 2 weeks. Jasmine appeared behind her tablet in hand. Flight crews are reporting passive delays at shared terminals. Vista ground staff are dragging their feet on purpose. It's subtle, but deliberate. Marcus nodded. They're trying to strangle our operations while claiming plausible deniability. He turned to Zoe. How exposed are we? We have about 10 days before serious disruptions hit passengers, she replied. Unless we act, Jasmine slid a folder across the table. Here's your leverage. Inside were confidential memos anonymously provided by whistleblowers at partner companies. The documents detailed Vista's influence peddling strategic incentives offered to vendors for withdrawing from Skyline. This is illegal, Marcus muttered, flipping through the pages. Not just illegal, Zoe added. It's organized sabotage, wire fraud, antitrust violations. If we present this correctly, Vista's board will have no choice but to act. And the DOJ, Marcus asked. Already watching, Zoe confirmed. But we can't wait for them to move. Marcus picked up his phone. Get me Jerome Baldwin at the Civil Rights Coalition and call Governor Lewis. Let's see if those transportation grants Charles lobbied for still look good now. It was time to counterattack. The press conference was held at the National Air Travel Conference Hall Neutral Territory, deliberately chosen. The venue buzzed with journalists' cameras and government observers. Every airline CEO had declined to attend in person, except Marcus Washington. He walked onto the stage alone, flanked only by Jasmine and Zoe. I stand before you not just as the CEO of Skyline Airlines, he began, but as a representative of every customer and employee who's ever been told subtly or directly that they don't belong. He held up the memos. These documents detail an organized effort to disrupt our operations through economic coercion, misinformation, and discriminatory retaliation. Screens behind him flashed excerpts, signed letters, recorded calls, whistleblower affidavits. This is not business. It is sabotage. And it undermines the trust of every passenger who steps onto an aircraft, believing in fairness and safety. Gasps rippled through the crowd. In the past 48 hours, Skyline Airlines has filed formal complaints with the Department of Justice, the Department of Transportation, and the Securities and Exchange Commission. We're also filing a civil suit against Vista Airlines for business interference and civil rights violations. Then came the twist. And we're not doing it alone. He gestured to the wings of the stage. Out walked CEOs from 3 regional carriers, each of whom had privately admitted experiencing similar sabotage tactics from larger legacy airlines. Their presence sent a shockwave through the room. Together they announced the formation of the Fair Skies Alliance, an unprecedented coalition of carriers committed to transparency, equal service, and accountability in aviation. Vista tried to divide and isolate us, Marcus said. Instead, they've united us. News coverage exploded. Fair Skies now trended globally. Civil rights groups rallied in support. Investors reevaluated long-term strategies. But it was what happened 30 minutes later that triggered the true climax. As Marcus stepped off the stage, Zoe's phone buzzed. Her face changed instantly. Emergency board session at Vista. Richard Whitmore just flew in from Dubai. He's not speaking to the press. What's happening? Marcus asked. Zoe turned the phone toward him. A leak. The screen showed a Vista Airlines internal email InstructGate agents to deprioritize passengers from flagged regions, especially those known to support Skyline Airlines. Route them through extended security. Marcus read it twice. You were right, Zoe whispered. This goes deeper than business. It's ideology. Alicia called in from HQ. Marcus, our bookings just surged 34% in 6 hours, and employees from 2 other carriers are asking to join Skyline. The tide had shifted. Marcus leaned back against the wall, a wave of quiet vindication washing over him. Vista had launched a covert war. Skyline just answered in full daylight. The Skyline headquarters had never been louder. Phones rang off the hook. Legal teams drafted responses in real time, and news alerts blinked on monitors like emergency signals. But Marcus Washington was calm. He knew the storm had arrived, and he was ready for it. Zoe Chen entered the room with a grim expression. They're scrambling. Vista, Marcus asked. Zoe nodded. We just got word that their legal counsel resigned this morning. Another senior executive leaked information confirming that Richard Whitmore personally authorized the gate agent memo deprioritizing Skyline supporting passengers. Jasmine entered next, holding a flash drive. From our contact at the Department of Transportation. There's more. The contents of the flash drive were staggering. Marcus plugged it into the war room console. Dozens of flagged emails, surveillance logs, and payment records lit up the screen. Zoe whistled. They were paying airport contractors to delay our flights. Jasmine's voice cracked. And they flagged names black passengers who complained workers who filed reports. They called them low-value consumers. For a few seconds, silence blanketed the room. Marcus clenched his jaw. Prepare a full presentation. We go public today. But it'll paint a target on your back, Jasmine warned. There's already a target there, Marcus replied. Might as well let them know I see it too. By 2:00 p.m., every major news network had received invitations to a second Skyline press briefing, this time hosted at the Federal Justice Center, a clear message that the airline had government allies now watching every move. In a packed auditorium filled with reporters, regulators, and civil rights leaders, Marcus stepped onto the stage. The lights flashed. The hum of broadcast feeds activated. And then the screens behind him came to life. This Marcus began gesturing to a chart, is how a discriminatory machine operates under the mask of policy. He revealed a series of internal Vista communications showing how airport contractors were bribed to delay Skyline aircraft, how gate agents were instructed to withhold priority boarding to Skyline-affiliated loyalty members, and most damning of all, a categorized list of undesirable passengers compiled from online data scraping. Black passengers, Hispanic passengers, whistleblowers systematically flagged and tracked. Audible gasps filled the room. Journalists typed furiously. Activists recorded every word. Jasmine joined him on stage and delivered a statement, her voice trembling but firm. These tactics weren't just targeting Marcus. They were targeting all of us, anyone who dared to ask for fairness. I was part of the crew they tried to silence, and I'm standing here now so they'll never silence another voice again. The room erupted in applause. Then came the climax. Zoe approached with a USB stick, whispered something into Marcus's ear, and handed him a tablet. On it was a newly decrypted voice memo from a Vista executive's private line. They played it live. Richard Whitmore's voice echoed through the hall. If we keep Skyline boxed out, keep them cornered long enough, their values will destroy them. These bleeding heart equality pushes don't last. Airlines are about hierarchy, not hand-holding. Let Marcus crash and burn, and then we buy the pieces. The crowd erupted into chaos. Reporters screamed questions. Marcus stood still. Then slowly, he said, "You've just heard how the old way thinks. Let me tell you how the new way responds." He clicked to the final slide. Skyline Airlines has officially filed a request with the Senate Transportation Committee for a full hearing into discriminatory practices in commercial aviation. We will testify. We will name names. We will not back down. He left the stage to standing ovation. That night, the fallout was swift and brutal for Vista. Their stock dropped 18% overnight. Senators demanded hearings. Regulators launched formal investigations. And perhaps most poetic of all three major airline unions issued a joint statement condemning Vista's actions and endorsing Skyline's transparency policies. Marcus sat alone in his office, the lights of the city blinking outside, when his wife Isla entered with a mug of tea. She set it on his desk and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You didn't just expose a company today," she whispered. "You exposed a culture." He looked up exhausted but resolute. "And now we change it." Just then, a message pinged on his phone. It was from Tamir Jones's mother. "Tamir just saw you on TV. He says, 'Tell Mr. Marcus I'm not scared to fly anymore.'" Marcus exhaled and smiled. The next morning, Marcus Washington woke up to an emergency notification. Breaking Vista Airlines. Accuses Skyline CEO of orchestrating corporate smear campaign. Legal action imminent. He sat upright. The battle had begun. Across multiple networks, the PR blitz was relentless. A polished Vista spokesperson, flanked by legal counsel, stood before the press and delivered a statement dripping with feigned outrage. Mr. Washington has weaponized race and sympathy to conceal unethical behavior. This isn't justice. It's sabotage disguised as reform. Vista had filed a $75 million defamation lawsuit against Marcus personally. The lawsuit was a smokescreen, but a dangerous one. Zoe Chen called immediately. "They're playing hardball," she said, and leaking edited footage to spin the narrative. The footage included a clipped video of Marcus confronting a flight attendant, cut just before the context of his hours-long mistreatment. It looked like a tantrum. "They're painting you as unstable," Zoe said. "It's character assassination, textbook strategy, and Whitmore's fingerprints are all over it." "Let them come," Marcus replied. "We respond with transparency." Within hours, Marcus's legal team launched a countersuit, not just against Vista, but directly naming Richard Whitmore for conspiracy to defame and manipulate federal oversight processes. But that wasn't the only front under siege. Skyline's own boardroom grew uneasy. 3 members requested an emergency internal audit. Another board member suggested a pause on Marcus's reforms until the lawsuit settled. And then came the betrayal. That afternoon, Patricia Reynolds, chairwoman of the board, asked to meet privately. She entered Marcus's office with a hard-to-read expression. "They've offered a deal," she said plainly. "Drop the countersuit. Issue a joint statement with Vista. In exchange, the lawsuit goes away." Marcus leaned back, eyes narrowed. "And what do we give up?" "They want temporary control over Skyline's PR. A Vista liaison would join our media department." He stared at her. "Let me get this straight. We admit fault. For something we exposed, give them control over our voice and pretend the discrimination we uncovered didn't happen." Patricia sighed. "I'm trying to protect the company." "No," Marcus said. "You're protecting comfort." She stiffened. "Think about your legacy, Marcus. Don't lose everything just to prove a point." He stood. "If doing what's right costs me everything, then everything wasn't worth keeping." That night, Skyline headquarters went dark except for one office, Marcus's. He sat alone crafting a bold response. Not a legal document. Not a press release. A manifesto. By morning, the company website had replaced its homepage with Marcus's letter. Addressed directly to passengers, employees, and the public, it read, "I will not trade justice for peace. I will not sanitize the truth to appease the powerful. What we experienced was not a misunderstanding. It was a revelation. I've been threatened, sued, and vilified. But if you're reading this, know that I'm still standing. Because the pain of one child fearing a plane seat isn't worth 1 cent of shareholder return. If that makes me unfit to lead this airline, then so be it. But I won't lead by silence. Not now. Not ever." The response was immediate. Passengers flooded social media with stories. "Stand with Skyline" trended globally. Civil rights groups issued statements of support. Even federal officials began referencing Marcus's manifesto in hearings. But the climax came unexpectedly. Later that day, during a live town hall streamed from Skyline's New York terminal, Marcus fielded audience questions. A passenger stood up, an older white man in a gray trench coat. "I've flown first class for 30 years, he said, his voice clear. "And I used to think I deserved it more than others. More money, more respect. But last week, a black mother and her son were treated like intruders on the same flight. I watched it happen." He took a breath. "I never spoke up before. But your story, this fight, it made me see it. And I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that to you and to them." A hush fell over the room. Then applause, not for Marcus. For the man's courage to change, Marcus stepped forward. "Thank you. You proved something today. That reform isn't about blame, it's about clarity. And once we see, we cannot unsee." Outside the terminal, protesters had gathered, some for Marcus, some against. But as the man exited the building, a group from both sides stepped back, united briefly by the weight of his admission. In the world of aviation, altitude matters. But Marcus Washington had discovered something more powerful than cruising above the clouds. Truth, even when turbulent, always moves forward. It began at 6:03 a.m. with a single email. Subject: urgent internal server breach detected. Marcus had just finished his run through the city's early morning fog when Alicia, his assistant, called. Her voice trembled. "Sir, someone's trying to wipe our complaint archive. The entire discrimination dataset, it's being deleted in real time." Marcus didn't flinch. "Lock the servers. Alert Zoe." Within minutes, Skyline's cybersecurity team went into lockdown mode. Firewalls triggered, emergency backups initiated, and physical access to the server room was revoked. But they were already too late. 20% of the archived evidence gone. The attack was surgical targeting files linked to passenger race and staff identity patterns. Someone had known exactly what to erase. This wasn't sabotage. It was an inside job. Zoe Chen arrived within the hour, trench coat soaked from rain tablet in hand. It came from a remote login, with board-level credentials, she said. Encrypted. Routed through 6 international servers. But we traced the session fingerprint. Marcus scanned the screen. Username, R.W. Whitmore exec. He exhaled slowly. Of course. The next step was clear. They had to go public again. This time, not with a statement. With proof. At noon, Marcus and Zoe held a surprise press conference. No suits, no teleprompters. Just 2 people, a table, and 1 flash drive. Earlier today, Marcus began. Skyline Airlines experienced a deliberate attempt to erase critical data about systemic discrimination within our organization. That data was collected during our investigation into unequal passenger treatment, an investigation this board authorized. He looked up, calm but burning. The source of this breach has been identified as a former executive board member, and we have no intention of letting this corruption stay hidden. Zoe clicked play. On the screen behind them, archived surveillance from a year ago showed Richard Whitmore in Skyline's HQ server room alone, installing a small device beneath a console. Then another clip, him dictating to his executive assistant. Flag all minority complaints as non-priority. Reclassify under general customer service. Shockwaves rippled through the audience. Reporters whispered. Phones buzzed. But the press conference hadn't even reached its climax. Zoe pulled up one final recording audio from a Vista board meeting leaked by a whistleblower. Richard's voice crackled through the speakers. Let Washington keep playing hero. Every time he makes noise, we shift routes and absorb the fallout. By the time he realizes what's happening, we'll have picked Skyline clean and left him holding the wreckage. That sentence landed like a gut punch. Back at Skyline HQ, Patricia Reynolds called for an emergency board meeting. This time, she didn't wait for consensus. Effective immediately, she declared Skyline will file federal charges against Richard Whitmore for attempted data destruction, corporate espionage, and conspiracy to defraud the public. No one objected, but retaliation came quickly. Within 48 hours, Vista Airlines filed a countersuit accusing Marcus of unlawful surveillance. Richard's legal team issued an injunction attempting to block the press conference footage. A wave of bots flooded Skyline's customer reviews, leaving thousands of 1-star ratings overnight. Meanwhile, 4 of Skyline's oldest maintenance partners suddenly terminated contracts. A tech vendor paused delivery on critical software updates. Even airport gate assignments were mysteriously downgraded, placing Skyline aircraft at the furthest terminals. This wasn't coincidence. This was economic warfare. Marcus, exhausted but composed, called an all-hands meeting with his executive team. "This is what it looks like when old systems fight for survival," he said. "But here's the thing, they're not trying to stop us from failing. They're afraid we're going to win." Then came the real shock. A private message landed on Marcus's secured channel. From WhistleVistaAviation.net, subject Project Eclipse. He opened the attachment and froze. It was a document labeled Vista Internal Transition Timeline. Inside, detailed plans laid out a strategy to absorb Skyline Airlines in the next fiscal year. Stage 1, undermine public trust. Stage 2, trigger board instability. Stage 3, initiate quiet acquisition. Stage 4, dissolve Skyline brand entirely by Q-Wasser. It was all there. The playbook. And at the bottom, one signature, Charles Whitmore. The collapse wasn't accidental. It was orchestrated. Marcus called Patricia immediately. "We have confirmation. Vista's endgame is acquisition. We have less than 90 days before they make their move." She didn't hesitate. "Then we fight. Not just to survive, but to redefine what this industry looks like." At the same moment, Jasmine Thomas was visiting a training center when she was surrounded by 3 union reps. They handed her a notice. "You are being placed under review for insubordination and collaboration with hostile management." Her voice didn't shake. "I reported the truth. That's not insubordination. That's integrity." The union wasn't listening, but Marcus was. He offered her a new position that night, Director of Passenger Justice Operations. "You're not just part of this reform, Jasmine," he said. "You're one of its architects." As the week closed, Skyline's stock dropped another 7%. Media coverage painted a company on the verge of implosion. But inside Skyline HQ, a different picture was forming. Whistleblowers from other airlines had begun reaching out. Former FAA staff sent encrypted tips. Civil rights leaders requested meetings. The collapse Vista hoped to trigger was real, but not of Skyline. It was the collapse of silence. And in its place, a movement was rising. 3 days after the data breach and Vista's internal takeover plan was exposed, Marcus Washington stood in front of a digital wall at Skyline HQ, a live dashboard of every department's reform progress. Sections blinked red, yellow, and green, representing compliance delays or outright resistance. Most of it still blinked red. "This is our battlefield now," he told his senior team. "And we win it, system by system, policy by policy, person by person." The board had authorized emergency funding to rebuild the erased complaint archives and deploy AI-driven monitoring tools, anonymous, pattern-based, and immune to manual manipulation. But technology was only part of the solution. The deeper challenge was cultural. In the training hall, Jasmine Thomas stood before 50 new hires, all minority candidates, all watching her with equal parts awe and caution. "This company almost lost its soul," Jasmine began. "We're not fixing bad apples. We're tearing out the roots that fed them." The room went silent. "We don't need perfect staff. We need awake ones. You'll be the generation that resets the tone in every aisle, every gate, every policy call. And yes, the pressure will be immense. But so is the opportunity. We are rewriting what professionalism looks like at 35,000 feet. Outside that room, chaos still brewed. The FAA's expanded audit now required real-time demographic reporting for every complaint resolution and gate interaction. An aggressive measure, clearly political, but one Marcus embraced. "If the sky must be clear, then let it be transparent too," he said in a press conference. Still, resistance remained brutal. Bradley Wilson, now employed by Vista Airlines, appeared on a nationally televised panel. "I'm all for fairness," he said smugly, "but Skyline's become a circus. Flight crews are afraid to speak to passengers for fear of being recorded. Is that the environment we want for safe flying?" Marcus declined to respond directly, but Jasmine didn't. In a rare public interview, she fired back. "Safe flying starts with safe passengers. If you can't treat people with dignity while doing your job, maybe the issue isn't the cameras, it's the mirror. Her words went viral, but the backlash came fast. She received a death threat slipped under her apartment door. Marcus arranged 24-hour security for her that night. He also gave her a raise. Meanwhile, the most unexpected twist came from the industry regulator. An anonymous internal audit from the Department of Transportation was leaked to Skyline's compliance team. It revealed that for years, complaints filed by Black and Latino passengers across all major airlines were being categorized as low priority during initial screening. Systemic, institutional, and quietly buried. Marcus made a bold move. He flew to Washington, D.C., and personally handed the leak to the Inspector General. "This isn't just an airline problem," he said. "It's a national transportation failure." 2 weeks later, the Inspector General issued a public statement confirming the audit's legitimacy and opening a full investigation into DOT complaint handling procedures. Suddenly, Skyline wasn't just reforming itself. It was becoming the standard-bearer for change across the aviation industry. But even as reform advanced, cracks widened. Alicia Marcus's trusted assistant collapsed at her desk from exhaustion. She had been averaging 90-hour weeks for 2 months straight. Marcus sat beside her in the medical bay. "You need to rest," he said quietly. "I need to see this through," she replied. "But not if I break in the process." That night, Marcus made a policy change, enforced caps on executive work hours. "Culture starts with how we treat each other," he said, "not just passengers." The next day, he walked unannounced into a ground operations meeting. 10 stunned staffers froze mid-discussion. Marcus pointed to a whiteboard filled with red ink around Zone D boarding. "Why are we flagging that section for extra verification?" he asked. A supervisor hesitated. "Historically, that's where the most incidents occur." Marcus stared at him. Incidents or assumptions? The supervisor tried to pivot. "We're just following legacy protocols." "Legacy isn't an excuse," Marcus replied. "It's a warning. Rewrite that protocol." Today, the meeting adjourned in silence, but something shifted. That afternoon, employees across departments began voluntarily submitting anonymous reports of coded language, unofficial training biases, and unspoken policies they had always been too afraid to challenge. Overnight, Skyline's internal ethics portal crashed under the volume of submissions. Marcus addressed the company. "We are not crumbling. We are opening the floodgates. Let the truth in. Let the rot out." And then the climax. Marcus received a direct call from Vista's legal counsel. "Mr. Washington, our client, wishes to resolve all outstanding matters amicably, which means drop all public allegations, cease further disclosures. In exchange, Vista will withdraw acquisition interest and pay $200 million in damages confidentially." Marcus paused. "Tell Charles I'm not for sale. And neither is the truth." He hung up. The next morning, he received another envelope. This time, it was an offer from an international aviation coalition requesting Skyline's help drafting a global passenger equity standard. Marcus smiled. The rebuild had begun. Not just at Skyline, but worldwide. 6 days after declining Vista's hush money settlement, Marcus Washington stood in the Skyline war room reviewing crisis response simulations. The atmosphere was tense, electrified, not from fear, but readiness. They had expected retaliation. What they didn't expect was how fast it came. At 8:02 a.m., Skyline's internal communication system went dark. By 8:04, customer service portals were inaccessible. And by 8:06, ground agents at 6 major hubs were locked out of the central boarding system. The system hadn't crashed. It had been deliberately compromised. Cybersecurity confirmed it within an hour. A high-level breach routed through a shadow proxy tied to an overseas logistics firm, one of Vista Airlines' partners. Marcus gathered his crisis team. "This is sabotage," Thomas Jefferson said. "And they're not even hiding it. They don't need to. Marcus replied. Their betting will fold under pressure. But Skyline didn't fold. Within 45 minutes, the airline's backup network built in the wake of the original board scandal was operational. Emergency protocols rerouted check-in and boarding through mobile terminals. Manual manifests were activated for the first time in 2 decades. Delays stacked. Customers complained. But Skyline flights kept moving. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. By noon, Marcus issued a public statement. We have experienced a cyber incident that disrupted passenger services. No passenger data has been compromised. No flights were canceled. And most importantly, no dignity was sacrificed to efficiency. The phrasing struck a chord. While media debated Skyline's security, passengers shared stories of being treated with humanity amid chaos. Elderly travelers were helped manually. Children given extra attention. Ground staff stayed late without overtime just to ensure people got where they needed. But the sabotage didn't stop. The next blow came through the press. An anonymous whistleblower clearly orchestrated accused Marcus of manipulating data to exaggerate racial disparities. The accusation was detailed, and media outlets leapt on it. He cherry-picked incidents the source claimed. He made Skyline look worse than it was just to justify his reforms. Within hours, hashtags began trending. Inflated numbers. CEO with an agenda. Audit Skyline. Patricia Reynolds, the board chair, stormed into Marcus's office. Do we know who leaked this? Marcus nodded. A former HR analyst we terminated for falsifying complaint logs. The same one who covered for Diana Roberts. Patricia exhaled sharply. We need to go public with the context. Marcus shook his head. No. We let the data speak. Instead of a rebuttal, Marcus released Skyline's entire ethics audit, raw and unfiltered. Every complaint, every resolved case, every demographic breakdown. Transparent, blunt, undeniable. It was risky, but it worked. Within 24 hours, independent statisticians confirmed the original findings: systemic bias had existed. The leak was exposed as a desperate deflection. Then came the most unexpected climax. A senior FAA official anonymously leaked classified memos. For years, airlines, including Skyline before Marcus's reforms, had quietly submitted lobbying requests to avoid mandatory reporting on racial demographics in customer treatment. One of the leading names on those memos, Richard Whitmore. The leak sparked national outrage. Transportation subcommittees scheduled emergency hearings. Civil rights leaders demanded federal intervention. Airline passengers flooded social media with stories. And in the center of the storm stood Marcus Washington. Not as a man under fire, but as a man setting fire to an unjust system. But retaliation wasn't just digital or political. It got personal again. That evening, Illa Washington picked up their son from school and noticed a car tailing them black SUV tinted windows, unmarked plates. When she made 3 right turns, and the vehicle followed each time she pulled into a police station. The SUV vanished. Marcus arrived within 20 minutes, heart racing. This is escalation, Illa said calmly. It's not random. It's a warning. Marcus didn't blink. Then we respond. That night, Zoe Chen briefed him with new intel. We traced the offshore sabotage through a network of shell companies, all linking back to Vista's private security affiliate. You were right. This isn't corporate warfare. It's ideological. What's their endgame? Marcus asked. Discredit you. Tank Skyline. And prove that reform equals failure. Then we show them what success looks like. The next morning, Marcus called a press conference. Surrounded by ground crew, cabin crew, and passengers, black, white, Latino, Asian, old, young, disabled veterans, single mothers, business travelers, he made an announcement. Skyline Airlines will not be bullied, blackmailed, or buried. We are here to fly every passenger with dignity and to run every flight with justice. And to those who fear equity, we offer seats, not silence. Behind him, Jasmine Thomas unveiled the Skyline Black Box, a new policy tool any staff member could anonymously report inequality bias or retaliation. All reports would be audited by an external ethics board and made public quarterly. Total transparency, Marcus said. For every action, every seat, every flight, a young reporter raised his hand. "Mr. Washington, aren't you afraid you're going too far?" Marcus paused. "I'm afraid I haven't gone far enough." 3 days after Marcus Washington's public defiance against the sabotage campaign, Skyline's internal systems stabilized. Flights resumed normalcy, media support rallied, and public trust in the airline soared to its highest level in over a year. But not all the battles came from the outside. At 9:07 a.m. on a Thursday, Jasmine Thomas entered Marcus's office, carrying a thick, confidential report. "It's from the whistleblower hotline," she said. "Anonymous submission. You'll want to see this." Marcus scanned the first page. Then the second. His jaw tightened. The report outlined a coordinated resistance movement within Skyline current employees opposed to the anti-discrimination reforms. They called themselves the Legacy Coalition. Their mission? Restore traditional service hierarchies, protect legacy training standards, and resist the CEO's politicization of airline culture. Most shockingly, 15 current Skyline executives were listed as sympathetic or involved. Some were regional managers. Others controlled scheduling and performance evaluations. They had used their positions to undermine the reforms from within, assigning whistleblowers to punishing flight routes, delaying new diversity training rollouts, and flagging outspoken employees for HR review. "This was under our nose the whole time," Jasmine whispered. "No," Marcus corrected her. "It was under their nose that we'd find it." He activated a meeting with his most trusted inner circle: Thomas Jefferson, Jasmine Thomas, Patricia Reynolds, Zoe Chen, Alicia, his assistant, and 3 newly recruited regional directors from diverse backgrounds who had joined Skyline because of its reforms. "We have internal sabotage," Marcus said, "and it goes to the top." Patricia's brow furrowed. "Names?" Marcus nodded. Linda Mercer, Head of Pacific Operations. Tim Phelps from HR. Dana Cross, Training Oversight. They're all part of it. And worse, Dana's cousin works in Vista Airlines' Compliance Division. The dots connect. The room fell into a stunned silence until Jefferson broke it. "We need to act. Fast." "No," Zoe replied. "We need to act publicly. If we handle this quietly, they'll claim retaliation and censorship. We need to show our employees that transparency applies even at the highest levels." So they devised a plan. The Skyline Internal Ethics Summit. It would be broadcast live. Executives from every department summoned. An anonymous reporting tool would go live during the event. Every submission would display in real time, unedited, unfiltered on a screen behind Marcus. High risk, high reward. By 3:00 p.m. invitations had been sent. Every regional VP, HR lead, flight supervisor, and policy team would be present. Zoe's only warning: someone might try to shut this down or disrupt it. Marcus smiled. Then we make it indestructible. The morning of the summit, Marcus entered the Skyline auditorium flanked by his leadership team. Hundreds of employees were present in person. Thousands more joined via secure live stream. He stood at the podium and began, without preamble: "This airline is only as honest as the people who run it. And today, we test that honesty." Behind him, the 50-foot screen lit up. Skyline Internal Ethics Reporting live feed enabled. For the first minute, nothing appeared. Then, Flight Manager in Dallas routinely mocks new diversity training. Assigns minority trainees double workloads. Scheduling Supervisor demotes staff who speak up about racism. Tim Phelps told us to play nice when we reported a racial incident in first class. One by one, dozens of reports poured in. Anonymous, raw, heartbreaking. Some described slurs. Others detailed unfair schedule rotations. One shared a secretly recorded audio file, a senior trainer saying, "Black passengers always exaggerate." The auditorium grew colder with each submission. Then came the breaking point. Linda Mercer ordered suppression of the whistleblower data dashboard, calling it a distraction. Linda, seated in the front row, stood up abruptly. "This is slander," she shouted. "Anonymous accusations are not facts." Marcus raised a hand. "Then you won't mind if we compare your email logs to the whistleblower platform access dates." She turned red. "I've served this company for 23 years, and you've undermined its transformation every day since I announced it." Marcus cut in. She stepped forward. "This whole summit is a witch hunt." Marcus nodded to Jefferson. Within seconds, 3 uniformed ethics officers approached Linda and escorted her quietly from the auditorium. "I will sue this company," she screamed as the doors closed. Marcus turned back to the crowd. "Anyone else feel transparency is an attack?" "Now's the time." No one spoke. He continued. "For those of you who've been targeted today, we begin making it right." He unveiled Project Phoenix, a sweeping restructuring plan. Executives found complicit would be suspended pending investigation. New ethics officers would be embedded in every region. Whistleblower protections would now include schedule reviews and performance audits to detect retaliation. For every legacy coalition supporter removed, Marcus vowed to replace them with leaders chosen for merit, not history. By the end of the summit, Skyline had suspended 7 senior staff. 25 others were placed under review. And for the first time since his reforms began, over 4,000 Skyline employees sent in support messages. "Thank you for showing us this matters. Now I believe change is possible. My daughter flies for this airline." Today she cried because she felt seen. Back in his office that evening, Marcus received one final message. A short email with just 3 words. "We're not done." It was unsigned. 2 days after the Skyline Internal Ethics Summit rocked the company's foundation, Marcus Washington stood at the center of a whirlwind. Public praise poured in. Employee morale surged. The press hailed him as a reformer. But not everyone was celebrating. At 4:13 a.m., Marcus's secure phone vibrated. A message from Zoe Chen. "Urgent Richard Whitmore to announce new international airline within 24 hours. Targeting disgruntled staff from Skyline. Recruitment already underway. Backed by undisclosed foreign capital. Surveillance suggests plan to raid Skyline's top-performing routes." Marcus stared at the message pulse quickening. The Empire was striking back. He called an emergency meeting with Zoe, Jefferson, Jasmine, and Patricia. "This isn't just sabotage," Marcus said. "This is a declaration of war." Zoe leaned forward. "We've traced the shell companies. Richard's partnered with a global equity firm known for hostile takeovers. They're funneling resources into a new airline called Heritage Sky. They're recruiting former Skyline executives, including the ones we removed." "Let me guess," Jefferson said, folding his arms. "They're selling it as a return to traditional service values." "Exactly." Zoe nodded, and painting Skyline as a politically hijacked experiment. Patricia spoke next. "Our options." Marcus didn't blink. "We fight, not just to preserve what we've built, but to expose exactly who they are before they set foot in the sky." They launched Operation Horizon, a 2-part offensive. Expose Heritage Sky's true backers, including international financiers with histories of labor abuse and discrimination. Launch Skyline's Global Inclusion campaign, reinforcing its brand as the airline for every passenger, every flight, every time. But just as plans began to unfold, Marcus received an invitation he never expected. A private meeting request from Charles Whitmore, CEO of Vista Airlines, and Richard's son. The email was short. "Let's avoid mutual destruction. Meet me tonight, 9 p.m. Hangar 6 Logan International." It smelled like a trap. Jefferson warned, "He's testing you." Or worse, setting you up. I know, Marcus replied. But I'm going. At 8:55 p.m., Marcus stepped into the echoing hangar empty, except for a single Gulfstream jet and two suited figures. Charles and an older man Marcus didn't recognize. Mr. Washington, Charles said, extending a hand. This is Graham Ellis. He represents international stakeholders interested in preventing further escalation. Marcus didn't take the handshake. You mean damage control? Or a buyout? Charles chuckled. You always did like big words. Let's get to the point. Graham Ellis opened a briefcase. Inside a contract, an NDA, and a check. $50 million. In exchange for what Marcus asked, Charles answered flatly. You resign. Publicly acknowledge missteps. Say the board lost confidence in your divisive direction. Skyline goes back to neutral ground. Quiet. Profitable. Predictable. And I walk away with hush money, Marcus asked. Call it a thank you. Graham smiled. For not blowing up an industry. Marcus's eyes never left the check. Then he closed the briefcase. You're scared, he said. You're not offering me this because I failed. You're offering it because I succeeded. Charles's face hardened. If you reject this, we crush you. Heritage Sky will bleed your roots dry. Partners will vanish. Your planes will sit grounded while we take back control of the narrative. Marcus stepped closer. You've already lost the narrative. You're just trying to stop the hemorrhage. And then, the climax. Without warning, Marcus pulled out his phone, pressed a button, and tossed it to the floor. Charles blinked. What are you? The screen lit up. Live streaming 73,000 viewers. Graham swore. Charles lunged for the phone. Marcus picked it up calmly. You really thought I'd walk into this without protection. He turned the camera to his face. Ladies and gentlemen, you just heard it live. A $50 million bribe to kill reform. To silence truth. That's the legacy they're defending. He cut the stream. Charles was pale. This is war now, Marcus. Marcus stepped back. No, this is accountability. And it's airborne. He walked away. By morning, the clip had gone viral. 50 million silence trended globally. Headlines erupted. Skyline CEO offered massive buyout to quit reform. Heritage Sky, backed by international interests, exposed. Marcus Washington turns down $50 million for justice. Stock dipped, but trust soared. Customers flooded Skyline with support. Former critics now believers. Employees rallied. Executives from other airlines called asking for Marcus's roadmap. That afternoon, Jasmine knocked on Marcus's door. There's someone here to see you. A young black man in a flight school uniform entered. He introduced himself as Tamer Jones, now 18. You probably don't remember, Tamir said, voice cracking. But I wrote you when I was 10. Marcus smiled. I remember. I start pilot training next week. With Skyline. I just wanted to say thank you. Marcus shook his hand. Fly high, he said. Then fly higher. As the sun set that evening, Marcus watched Skyline aircraft line the runway. He didn't know what Heritage Sky would do next, but he knew one thing for sure. No bribe, no threat, and no enemy would ever be enough to ground the truth. 3 days after Marcus exposed the $50 million bribe on a live stream, the aviation world was on fire. News anchors couldn't stop replaying the moment Charles Whitmore's face dropped. Heritage Sky hadn't even launched its first commercial flight, but already the public perception was radioactive. Marcus stood at a press conference podium at Skyline's headquarters, flanked by Jasmine Thomas and Thomas Jefferson. Cameras flashed. Microphones buzzed. He cleared his throat. Skyline Airlines will never trade silence for security. Not when justice is at stake. Thunderous applause. But outside the building, storm clouds brewed. Within 48 hours, Skyline's regulatory filings were flagged by international agencies. The FAA announced an audit. A joint investigation from the European Aviation Commission began looking into Skyline's competitive practices allegedly spurred by concerns from multiple carriers. It was retaliation in motion. At a closed-door executive meeting, Marcus looked around the table. "We are under siege," he said. "Our success has threatened not just companies, but systems. And systems protect themselves." Patricia Reynolds nodded solemnly. "We expected backlash. We just didn't expect it this fast." Jasmine placed a folder on the table. "I've compiled testimonies from 200 former flight crew across 8 airlines. All confirm similar patterns: racial profiling, passenger targeting, cover-ups." Jefferson added, "We also have data from Zoe's team, clear evidence of cross-carrier coordination in the Heritage Sky launch. Former regulators now sit on their advisory board. This isn't just business, it's a counter-revolution. The solution? Go bigger." Marcus made a bold proposal: launch a global coalition of airlines regulators and civil rights organizations to standardize anti-discrimination protocols across the aviation industry. "Let's call it the Skyline Accord," he said. "One document, one set of principles, no matter the country." The room went still. Marcus Patricia said cautiously, "You're not just leading an airline anymore. You're launching a movement." "I'm okay with that," he replied. "Are you?" She smiled. "Let's fly." Over the next week, Skyline mobilized every available resource. Jasmine coordinated interviews with minority flight attendants in 12 countries. Jefferson released anonymized security reports showing global inconsistencies in passenger profiling. Zoe leveraged her international contacts to distribute the Skyline Accord draft to civil aviation authorities worldwide. Marcus went public with it all. In an international broadcast simulcast across 5 major networks, he stood before the world. "We're not perfect, but we are committed. Equal treatment isn't a regional value, it's a human one." Today, we ask all airlines to join us. That night, 14 airlines signed the accord, but one powerful voice remained absent. Vista Airlines. Then, the climax. 3 nights later, Marcus was alerted to a leak on a whistleblower site. A Vista Airlines internal training video had surfaced. In it, a senior executive instructed new hires, passengers in sections D and F extra eyes. Statistically, that's where issues come from. Another section showed a flight attendant being praised for escalating a complaint filed by a black passenger just to preempt optics. The footage was time-stamped 3 weeks prior. The backlash was immediate. Vista's stock plummeted 18% overnight. Corporate partners began cutting ties. A congressional subcommittee announced hearings. And then Marcus received the unexpected formal request from Charles Whitmore asking to meet again. At the private conference room overlooking the airport runway, Charles arrived wearing no tie, no entourage, no smugness. "I assume you've seen the leak," he said. "I did," Marcus replied. "It confirmed what we already knew." Charles exhaled slowly. "Vista's board is panicking. Our shareholders want an alliance terms dictated by you." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Are you here to surrender?" "I'm here," Charles said, "because my father was wrong." Silence. Charles leaned in. "He told me equality was a threat to efficiency, that appeasing activists would destroy profit. But you proved the opposite." "You didn't just fight me," Marcus said. "You tried to bury truth, to weaponize silence." Charles nodded. "I won't ask for forgiveness, but I want to join the accord." Marcus stood, extended a hand. Charles took it. But as they shook, Charles whispered, "Vista wasn't acting alone. The international regulators investigating you, Richard, funded their campaigns. He has files he's preparing to go scorched earth." Marcus nodded. "Then I guess it's time we light our own fire." By sunrise, Marcus had summoned the global press. This time, he didn't just release data. He released names. Former regulators turned lobbyists, airline executives who rewrote complaint metrics, PR firms paid to spin racial incidents as misunderstandings. The broadcast was called Skyline Unredacted. It trended #1 for 72 hours straight, and for the first time in aviation history, 4 major airline CEOs issued public apologies. Skyline's bookings exploded. The Accord gained 27 new signatures in 48 hours. Charles announced Vista would undergo third-party review. And yet Marcus knew the war wasn't over, because just as he celebrated, a message arrived from Zoe. We found the last piece, Richard's master file. Every buried report, every payoff, every blacklisted employee. Marcus stared at the screen. If they released it, the entire industry might implode. He turned to his team. "Tomorrow," he said, "we bring the whole system down." The following morning, Marcus stood in a quiet office lined with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Terminal C. Below, passengers moved through gates. Families reunited, solo travelers navigated efficiently. Flight crews walked in step-different uniforms. One mission. In front of him sat an encrypted drive, Richard Whitmore's master file. The last vault. Names, payoffs, suppressions. It didn't just incriminate Vista Airlines. It implicated regulators, vendors, and airline executives from 7 countries. Zoe's voice echoed in his memory. "Release this and the industry will never be the same. But neither will you." Marcus sat silently, hands folded. Jasmine entered, setting down a cup of tea. "You don't have to be the one to drop the hammer," she said. "I do," Marcus replied. And so at 9:00 a.m., Skyline Airlines published the full unredacted archive. It was a reckoning. International aviation authorities launched emergency reviews. Congressional hearings were fast-tracked. High-ranking officials resigned within hours. Airline stocks plummeted except one Skyline, which climbed 6% on news of its full transparency. But Marcus didn't celebrate. He boarded Flight 27 again. This time, no cameras, no pen recorders, no disguise. Just Marcus Washington, middle seat economy class, row 17. Across the aisle sat a young black boy clutching a toy airplane. His mother whispered calming words as he buckled in. Marcus smiled gently. The boy smiled back. No fear in his eyes. Progress. After landing, Marcus returned to the corporate campus, now renamed the Skyline Justice Center, dedicated to advocacy, auditing, and ensuring every flight lived up to the promise made during this transformation. He passed a mural of the original Flight 2187 whistleblowers. Jasmine Thomas, Thomas Jefferson. Even young Tamir immortalized with wings behind his back, holding a sign, "We all deserve to fly free." In the conference room, the board assembled. Patricia Reynolds opened the meeting. "We've seen the numbers. Customer trust at record highs. Employee applications doubled. Every competitor now adopting some form of the Skyline Accord." She turned to Marcus. "But there's one last item. Your contract." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You've taken this company further than anyone thought possible," Patricia continued. "But you haven't taken a day off in 2 years. The board unanimously offers you an extended sabbatical with full benefits, salary, and support. You've earned rest." Marcus didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at Jasmine. She nodded. "We've got this." Marcus stood and said simply, "Then it's time." Later that evening, he packed a bag. Illa watched him carefully. "Do you know where we're going?" she asked. "No," he smiled. "But I know why. To heal." They boarded a quiet retreat flight far from terminals and boardrooms. Marcus glanced back one last time before boarding. Not at the building, but at the tarmac. A runway. A symbol. Not of escape. Of beginning. Back at Skyline HQ, Jasmine opened an email from a major African airline requesting help implementing the Accord. Thomas Jefferson trained a new generation of security officers in bias-free threat detection. And at the Flight Academy, dozens of minority cadets wrote essays titled, "Why I Can Be Captain Now." The story had become more than a company saga. It had become a movement. An 11-year-old boy from Chicago sent Marcus a drawing of his own airline logo, Wings for All. It included people of every background boarding a plane with the caption, "Because everyone deserves sky." Marcus framed it. It sat beside Tamir's cockpit sketch, and a quote etched into Skyline's Marble Lobby One flight can change the sky. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to catch more gripping stories like this. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.